Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Hell Motel, the miniseries. No, not Hell's Motel or Hell's Hotel or Hotel Hell or Motel Hell. Hell Motel. And no, it's not based on no movie or nothing like that. So this was a mini series that came out on AMC Plus and Shudder. Shudder is the one who produced it, and it's a Canadian slasher show. It is created by the people who created the television show Slasher. In fact, this was actually supposed to be the 6th season of Slasher. Slasher ended about 2 years ago. And so originally it got picked back up, and the original title was Slasher Hell Motel. But then something happened. What exactly happened? I have no idea, but they decided to drop the title and just make it its own standalone thing. And so because of that, fans still call this Slasher Hell Motel. And I wish the Slasher show was still on, but it's not. And I gotta say, even though this show is not perfect, there are some slight flaws here and there. This is a heck of a lot better than the last 2 seasons of Slasher. Slasher season 1 is really, really good. It had a lot of drama and some really good kills, but the problem with Slasher season 1 is they didn't know how to integrate the characters in the main story when you know their backstory and everything. It's just kind of like you assume the story is going to follow this woman and her husband, but then all of a sudden all these people start dying. You see their flashbacks as to why, the bad stuff that they did, but they wasn't really integrated in the show where they was actual real characters. It's just like they appear for like an episode, it felt like, and then they just die. And so after that, the team got their rhythm with season 2. And season 2 is by far the best season the creators have ever created. It is a fan favorite, and they've never ever been able to duplicate that. They've never been able to replicate it in any kind of way. That was like the pinnacle of like this series, and they've just never been able to replicate that. Season 3 is just okay. It's a little messy because of the politics, and it's a little messy because of the storyline, but all in all, it's a good season. But then you get to season 4, and that's when things started to shift and things started to go downhill. And season 5 is just not even watchable in my opinion. And so these creators, Aaron Martin, the one who originally created Slasher, but then he left sometime after the first season, and then Ian Carpenter took over and stuff. Or maybe it was Adam McDonald, I'm not really sure. But anyway, it was one of those two. I think it was probably Ian. They took over. And so, Aaron, he's worked on things like Degrassi, Next Generation, Saving Hope, Being Erica, stuff like that. And a lot of people from them shows came on over to Slasher, especially that of like Paula Benchetti. She's appeared in every season of Slasher. She's in this show, and she's a co-producer. And she was in Degrassi, Next Generation. She was also in Being Erica and something else. So she's come a very long way. And so Aaron, who is, on the left, he was the original creator, but then, he came back as to being somebody who worked on this show. Then you have Ian Carpenter, who was the writer for this show, but also like a showrunner for Slasher. And then you have, who's in the middle, and then you have Adam McDonald, who is the director of this show. And he also worked on the Slasher show. And so I've often praised these creators, as you know, when talking about a slasher television series, not a slasher movie, but a television series, because of the simple fact when it comes to slasher television series, they tend to be teen dramas. The problem with that is that they rely too much on the teen drama aspect and not the slasher drama aspect in the slasher killings and stuff. Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream Queens, stuff like that. They rely too much on teen angst and all this other crap. But the thing I've always liked about these three creators is that the drama. You have a large group of characters, and the interesting thing about them is that even though they are the victims and they die, they are not innocent. They have all done crummy things in their history that has caused the killer to come after them. It's kind of like I Know What You Did Last Summer. A group of people, they did something bad. They tried to get away with covering up like a hit and run murder, and then years later, here comes the boogeyman and everything. Even though technically Ben Willis was always a bad guy, but whatever, they still try to get away with a hit and run murder. And so this is how the slasher television series is. You have these group of people who did the most like horrible type stuff in the past, and now the boogeyman's coming to get them and stuff, or boogie woman. And so and the heart of these series lies in the backstory. Whenever we get flashbacks, it's always what they did was terrible, horrible, and sometimes it's really good drama. Then, of course, you have the drama between the present day and all the characters. They can never get along and everything. They're always bickering with one another and stuff like that. And then just comes in a killer who kills them in the most awesome kind of way ever. The only problem with slasher is that the slasher never really chases after anybody. They kind of just like appear. There might be a scuffle, and then they just straight up kill somebody, and then they just disappear. And there's like a whole lot of like talking. So you never really see the slasher like creeping around like Ghostface does, or chasing after them like Ghostface. It's never really like that. And so, of course, like the killer reveal always comes in like the second to last or last episode. And so that's kind of like how their formula is. It's a lot of drama, heavy drama, is backstories and flashbacks, and a killer who just pops in and pops out. And so, I do wish the killers would be in the show a little bit more and chase around and this and that. But nevertheless, like I said before, it does tend to be a pretty cool show. And if there is a chase sequence, the chase sequence doesn't last that long. And so you always spend your entire time watching these 10 episodes wondering who the slasher is. And you can almost never ever tell. That's the thing in the beauty of this show. Now, this show is shorter. It has 8 episodes and not 10. They needed 10. Like I said before, it's a pretty good show. It's not perfect, but it is the comeback that these creators need, because the last 2 seasons of Slasher wasn't really good. And then there is Terror Train. These creators were tasked with remaking Terror Train, that 80s movie. And it's a Tubi original movie. Now, I'm not sure if I'm uploading this before I'm reviewing Terror Train or after. Because I'm recording this in August. I watched this in August and July, but I'm uploading it for October month and stuff. So I'm not sure if this video is going to come out before the Terror Train review or not. Anyways, if this comes out before, I'll just say this right here and now. No spoilers, but the first Terror Train remake was basically a shot-by-shot copy of the original. Like, I kid you not. It was like shot-by-shot, and there was only a couple of new stuff added to it, but only very barely. This was very shocking because these guys do a heck of a lot more than that. I truly believe Tubi told these guys, hey, just stick to the formula. Watch this movie and do everything they do and don't change too much up. And I bet you that's what happened, because these guys are way more creative than that. But then came Terror Train 2. And with Terror Train 2, Oddly enough, it was just a shot by shot. Well, not a shot by shot, but it was almost a shot by shot of the original movie and the remake, and it just retreaded the same exact story. Just changed things around, but had some of the surviving cast in there. And I'm just kind of like, okay, something, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the creators. I don't know if it's Tubi, but these guys can do better than that. So while the remake of Terror Train isn't horrible because it's literally a shot by shot, the guys have kind of fallen from grace. But I feel like this show is kind of getting them up the hill again. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a nice step in a good direction and everything. It could have been a stronger direction, but hey, I'll take whatever I can. Now, this show has mixed reviews for a reason. It's average and everything. They do some things in here that I'm very excited about. Like this huge twist with the killers that I've been asking for the longest time. I've been wanting somebody to make either a slasher television show or a movie or something where the killer reveal happens very early on to where you're like, crap. So this person is the killer, and it changes your perspective. Instead of guessing who it is and when they're going to get it, now you know exactly who it is. And every time they're alone in the room with somebody, you wondering when they're going to strike. But then the beauty of that twist is that you add the other twist to it. There's an additional killer that the original killers don't know about. So now it's kind of like, oh, okay, now you got these group of killers in the house that we know the identity to. And then there's a new killer who's based their killings off of their killings, and we don't know who the heck that is. And you won't find out until the very last episode, towards the very end of the scene. And the good thing about this is that it keeps you guessing. There's two people left alive, and you're constantly asking yourself, which one is it? Like, you literally have no idea. And it's two of the nicest characters in the show. So it's kind of like, they're a killer. Like, what the heck is going on? And when these two start accusing each other of why they think the other person is the killer, it makes sense. Like, what you know about their backstory and what you know about them. And then it's just kind of like, which one is it? Because both of them have motive to want to go around on a killing spree. And I love that. Like, it really keeps you guessing and everything. Sadly, with 8 episodes, not everybody gets a backstory, which is quite a shame because there isn't that much character development because there is no backstory. In fact, some of the backstories are very, very brief. Some are a little bit longer. But it is a shame that all these characters didn't get backstories before they die. Just like with Slasher, if you get a backstory, most likely you're gonna die. So that's how you know when you start seeing the backstory, that person most likely is not the killer. However, this show twists it up, and it does it for both people who die and people who survive towards the end. Like I said before, some character developments are very strong here. Some are like not really. But you know, a lot of these characters are very, very interesting. It just sucks that the ones who got the least screen time weren't developed as much. And like I said before, half of the cast is from the Slasher series. Others are like from Saving Hope, or like being Erica, or something like that, or just never been a part of any of those. The guy who plays JP, he was Carl from Goosebumps in the 90s. That's just awesome. I did not even recognize that man. He looks different. And so just like with all the other seasons, there is diversity. Yes, that's one thing I like about these creators. They bring on the diversity, whether it be women, people of color, the LGBT, and stuff like that. They make sure everybody is included, and it's not like some old 80s or 70s slasher. Which, most time, people don't really have no problem with that. Except for this one little idiot online I talked about a couple of months ago. So when it came to this season, a lot of people did not like the acting. I liked the acting. I thought it was pretty okay, pretty good here and there. There was only like maybe one or two who wasn't all that great because they was really acting it up. But other than that, I thought it was pretty good. So one person complained, is all like, well, this is what happens when you cast solely on like cultural identity and not because of talent and blah 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 and blah 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 blah. And so that's just another way of saying DEI, wokeness, diversity, these anti-woke like bigots and everything. And like I said a couple of months ago, I bet you anything, this person did not even watch the show. Because of the simple fact, when you actually do watch this show, yes, there are diverse characters and everything, but he's not talking about the characters, he's talking about the actors. And like I told you before, the show is primarily white. There's nothing but white people left and right in this show. It's like kind of like it was in the first season, not all that diverse. But to tell you the truth, every season is primarily white. So I don't know what this person is talking about. Because when you watch this show from the beginning to the end, you see that all the actors are primarily white. There are, let's see, two main black characters, a male and female, and there's also one of these characters, they show the younger form, so I guess it's like a third, if you want to say like a black person. Then there is one Asian woman, there's one Italian woman, but Italian people are technically white in a way because they're white Europeans. And then there is a like Latino trans man, but he's only in the last episode and he's barely in the last episode. And he's only there to set up something for like a certain character. That's it. They're not like telling you, oh, this is my problems with being a minority in the country, or there's nothing like that. They're not telling people, oh, you know, this is the struggles I went through. There's nothing like that. So for this person to say, oh, well, they just cast because of cultural identity and not because of talent, what is this person even talking about? Because the whole cast is literally white. Yes, there is a couple characters. There's a gay character in there. Like there's also a gay couple in here. But he's talking about the actors, not the characters. This is what I've been saying before. These idiots make up these lies to push whatever agenda they want. And the agenda is for you to hate them and everything. And for you to only want white people in TV and movies. It is disgusting. Because seriously, watch the freaking show. It's not that diverse. So, this show starts off with that of a character named Caitlin and her husband Joey, and they're like lost and they end up at a motel, Cold River Motel or something like that, and they're greeted by the couple that works there. And so all of a sudden at some point in time we see Joey get killed. And we have no idea who did it. And then 30 years later, this couple bought out, like, you know, the hotel. So anyways, I think this is set in like the late 80s or early 90s. But then later on, we see Caitlin get murdered as well in some kind of weird satanic like ritual and everything. And so once again, we have no idea who the killer is. 30 years later, this couple decided to buy out the motel and reopen it because it hasn't been open since the massacre and everything. And like they're gonna have some kind of like VIP event for everybody that is obsessed with this murder that happened 30 years ago. There are podcasters, there's an slasher actress, a professor who wrote like a thesis on this, a artist who draws like people who have died before, and some dude who do like seances and stuff, right? And so they're all, there's also a chef that likes to make food out of like, it looks like human body parts. It's not a real human body, but he sculpts it in a way that makes it look that way, and he has like turkey inside, stuff like that. And so, they're there. And then the chef dude, what's his name? Hemingway, I think it is. He decides to give them a cocktail. It's 10% vodka and 90% his blood, and they don't know that at first. He thinks it's eccentric and think, oh, you're drinking a little bit of me and everything. And so they're outraged for a reason. Then all of a sudden a huge storm hits and it's flooding the streets, and it's like a really bad storm. And this motel is like really, 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 really far in the woods, and civilization is like 25 miles away, which will take you hours if you had to walk. So they get delivered there by that of a hearse. All of a sudden, as they're grossed out by like the stuff they had to eat and drink, they get a knock at the door. It's an elderly couple, Shirley and Floyd. The streets are like flooded and everything, and they can't drive on it, and they want to know if they can stay at the motel. Well, the couple will not let them. The couple is about as nasty can get, and tell them to stay in their RV. So that's where they stay. And that was really messed up because they're like the nicest couple ever, right? So the slasher actress, Paige, who's played by Paula Bacanti, she's the one who's the co-producer. She's been in like all the slasher seasons and those other projects. She was even in Jump In for Disney Channel and stuff. So like I said before, she's come a long way since her Degrassi Next Generation days and being Erica and stuff. So like she's friendly to the couple and everything, and the only people who's nice to them. And she tries to sneak them in, but before she can sneak them in, she's walking back to the motel where all of a sudden the killer from 30 years ago is chasing after her in the woods. They cut open like her cup, and it's a real knife, and they're chasing after her. All of a sudden, when she falls and the killer goes for the strike, it turns out it is a prank. It is the couple who bought the motel who's filming all this, thinking, ha ha ha, wouldn't this be fun? She doesn't find this very funny, and it was a real knife, and they were wearing the exact same costume for 30 years ago. So after that, Shirley and Floyd sneak into the motel where they are caught by the couple. The couple is still being very, very, very rude to them and everything. And so but they let them stay, telling them they can spend just one night there. They can take one shower, don't eat no food, stuff like that. Right. And so some people don't want to stay there, and they're a little creeped out. And so what is it? Because of the simple fact, somebody ends up dying. Hemingway, I think that's his name. I think that's his name, Hemingway or something like that. He gets no backstory whatsoever. We really don't know nothing about him except for he likes to make food look like people's bodies and make people drink his blood. He's in the sauna. And here comes the real killer, cranking up the temperature and locking the door. And he roasts. He dies. That dude got grilled. He got cooked. It is gross and it is disgusting and everything. And so everybody's like freaking out this and that. So people don't want to stay there. So they want Floyd and Shirley to drive them back into town. But there's a problem. The killer disabled their car and made it explode. So now everybody is stuck there with no cell reception and no Wi-Fi. And then the twist of all twists came that I've been wanting to happen for the longest time. There is a flashback of Caitlin getting murdered, and you see two people dragging her away. One is dressed as the killer and the other just has like a cloak on. And you see the flesh of one person's skin. And I'm all like, hold up, that's a black hand. So then I stopped and I thought to myself, no, they didn't do this, did they? They're not going to do this, are they? They did. It's the couple from the beginning of the episode. Turns out they don't work there. They killed the people who worked there, and then they pretended to be them. And of course, in a shocking twist, Floyd and Shirley are the original killers. And they are so happy and excited because they're about to start their killing spree again because they haven't done it in a while. And so, like, this is why they came back to the motel and everything, because they're in some type of Satan type cult and everything. But they're shocked and surprised to find out that there's an actual third killer there, because they did not kill Hemingway and everything, but they did cause their car to explode so they could be trapped there. So now they're shocked and surprised, and they're like, crap, we can't keep doing what we're doing until we find out who this killer is. I've been wanting a twist like that forever, because it makes you wonder, when are they gonna kill somebody when they're alone in the room with them? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so happy they did that. Okay, so I'm gonna do character bios in the order that these characters kicked the bucket. So I'll start first with the couple, and that of Portia. Portia is the blonde one, and her backstory reveals that she never wanted to buy this place, but she was persuaded by Ruby. And so Portia is just like, we don't really know much about them. We just know that those two really love each other in the flashback, but in the present day, they wanted to, like, you know, preserve this like motel because of like the massacre and exploit it and stuff like that. And so, like, also, like I said before, they're very rude and very, very mean and stuff like that. Like, what they did to Paige was just unexcusable and everything. And so Portia is the first one to get it. When those two was asleep in the bed, the killer did the most unthinkable thing ever. The killer literally reached up, grabbed Portia by the mouth so she wouldn't scream, and stabbed her through the chest with a knife, and then started sawing around the heart. Ruby had no freaking clue because she was like knocked out of sleep. And plus, I think they both might have been drinking a little bit and stuff like that. And so the next morning, Ruby woke up screaming to see her lover's heart sticking like on the outside of the body and everything. And you gotta think about it like this. There's a lot of cushion in the bed. There is, like, you know, the bottom mattress, and then there's the top mattress. And so that had to be there was a long freaking blade to go up, and with a serrated edge just started sawing around. But the fact that she couldn't hear nothing because, you know, Ruby was asleep is just all blowing and stuff. So Ruby is freaking out, and for good reason. Her lover literally just died next to her while she was asleep. And of course, she looks like prime suspect number one. Now, Ruby is in disbelief and believes that, hey, if I take my lover's heart and try to stick it back in her chest, maybe she'll come back alive. That's how upset she is and how much she is freaking out. But like I told you before, the people in the motel, they not buying it. They think she killed her lover. They think she killed Hemingway. So they literally grab her and drag her down below, kind of like a storage unit type place. She's kicking, she's screaming, all this stuff, and they tie her to like a chair. They think that, you know, since they think she's the killer, so they keep her tied there, nobody else is gonna die. So, like, they question her and everything. Some people believe she did it and some do not. Paige is one of those people who believes that maybe she had nothing to do with this, despite scaring the crap out of Paige before. So when they leave her, she's able to free herself and she escapes through the ventilation system. And all I could think of, oh, God, I hope she can get out. God, I hope she can get out. She manages to go in one room, but then at some point they find her again. And when they find her again, they not taking no chances. This is when the hotel or the motel guest starts to turn on her even more. They're at the point where they're all like, you know what? Um, crap, what's his name? What's his name? What's his name? What is the dude's name from the vampire? My baby says a vampire show, because he's in this. I can't think of his name right now. Oh, wait. I think it's Blake, I think. So Blake, he's more paranoid than anybody else because of the simple fact he survived an actual slashing massacre back in the day when he was in a fraternity. So him, along with Floyd and Crow and I think her name is Adriana, I think. They decided they're gonna kill the killer before the killer kills them, and they stab the crap out of her over and over and over like a lynch mob. Everybody else is just very shocked to like see this and can't believe what they did. And Adriana's like getting off on this, and so is Crow, and of course Floyd, because Floyd hasn't killed nobody in a long time. And this starts to make Floyd turn a little dark as the season goes on. Crow is a very strange man. He believes he can see ghosts. He does seances, and whatever hallucinogenics that he uses, he gets wacky off them and stuff. He is very obsessed with the murders that happened 30 years ago. And with his backstory, he likes to push a little too far. When he thinks he's right about a murder, he gets very, very persuasive. So after doing the seance and everything about this one murder, the cops have this one guy in custody. Now, the actor playing the cop is the very first slasher from the very first season, the original first slasher. And so Crow believes this man actually did it, but he keeps confessing over and over he did not do it. So somehow Crow is able to persuade the cop into questioning him even more, and I think using like a trigger word to try to make something come out. Whatever that cop said, like really, really upset this man. He professes his innocence, and he is. And so he freaks out and starts ramming his head on the table, banging it. Then he bites down on his wrist and pulls out a huge chunk of his skin, and he bleeds to death. Turns out Crow was wrong and this man was innocent, so Crow and the cop is now responsible for his death. So Crow has a very weird behavior whenever he's in the motel, and so when the killer offs him and everything, Crow gets like ambushed and everything. He gets like tied to a chair, and he tries to get away, but then he falls over, and then the killer takes a bunch of nails and hammer them in the back of Crow's head. You think he's dead, but no, it's more like lobotomy and everything. The nails are screwing with his brain, and all he can do is like stutter. So Floyd, who's now happy to kill again, decides when everybody's gone, he's going to like suffocate that of Crow by covering his mouth and everything. Cowan is an artist, and he likes to make, like artsy art type stuff depicted in however he interprets a person's murder and stuff. One thing he likes to do is use his own blood for like his art and everything, similar to like the chef. There's not much we know about this guy whatsoever, and he never gets a backstory, which really sucks and everything, because he's black, so they didn't give him one. So like he talks in a very artsy, philosophical kind of way. Him and Shirley act like they have a bond to where she's kind of like turned on by him and everything. Well, at some point, he's like outside with one of the other like guests. And then all of a sudden, they're both attacked by the killer. And they fight the killer off and everything. Both of them get like wounded and all this other like bad stuff. So it was also raining that day. So when they come back in, Blake is all like, okay, you two just got attacked, so I know you're not the killer. And so whoever the killer must be, their shoes must be muddy. Turns out it's not the new killer, it was Floyd getting all antsy pantsy back in his costume and stuff like that. He quickly like changes and cleans his shoes off and everything like that. Now, when I first saw this, my first reaction was the same as Blake. That like, because these two are getting attacked by the killer, there's no way they can be the killer. But then I'm all like, oh, wait a minute, there's two original killers in the house, and that's exactly what happened. Anyways, Floyd just doesn't like this dude, and because Kawain and somebody else, they suggested, hey, we should just take our chances outside and get back to civilization. Because it's 24 miles, but that'll take 15 hours. Floyd is trying to do his best to keep everybody there so he can start killing everybody. And he tells them, like, look, we're out in the woods. There are wolves out there and all kinds of other stuff. If we go trancing around at night, we're going to get attacked. But everybody decides, you know what, come morning, they're just going to hike it and everything for those 15 hours. And so, like, he doesn't like that, you know, this dude and somebody else suggested that. So he goes to kill him. But then I think the artist dude kind of suspects something about Floyd because his temper is starting to get out of control. So they fight and Shirley comes through a window and starts stabbing him in the back. Then they decide, hey, we can get artsy too and everything. So either these two decided to make Kawain like a work of art, very Hannibal style from the TV show, or the new killer decided to do it. Adriana, so she is played by Genevieve DeGraves, and I remember her, well, also from the slasher show. But she was in Chapel Wait. Now, I reviewed Chapel Wait one time. Go watch that. It's a really good vampire show. And it got picked up for a second season, only for MGM Plus decided to reverse it and then cancel it. And so she is the strangest one out of like everybody. Well, to a certain degree, I should say. Probably not as strange as the chef. That's just disgusting. But she has a problem. Now, she has a podcast. She loves psycho killers and everything. She loves them so much, she's made it her hobby to constantly talk about them. And she made it her hobby to clickety-clack them in jail. What she does is she finds out somebody's murdered somebody and has a conjugal visit with them. She's constantly blanking serial killers. She has a serious problem in her head. She knows she does, but she doesn't know how to get help. She also has a thing for Blake because he survived that massacre to the point where she pretty much like blanks him on the first or second day, but she loves blood. She takes a knife and she cuts him, and then they start like doing it and everything. He's not turned on by getting cut. And when her attitude starts to get a little chaotic and everything, he is completely turned off by her because she is very manic and very screwed up in the head. If you ever remember the movie, what's that witch, The Craft? Remember the really goth girl, like the really eccentric personality? She has one like her when she starts to have a nervous breakdown. And so her and Paige can't get along because Adriana is just like flipping out at the moment and stuff. So, but the thing is, Adriana is also scared of the killer. When she starts to see the guys get attacked outside, she just stands there. Either she's not even enjoying herself, she's just looking in fear. And she wants to survive more than anything else. Now, one of the dudes that she blanked is the original killer from season 3, the druid. Yes, so this show is connected to season 3 of Slasher. So if it's connected to that, then it's also directly connected to season 4 because season 3 and 4 decided, hey, let's connect our shows like American Horror Story. So season 3 and season 4 are connected because of this one character. And the events of season 4 happened way before the events of season 3. The druid got captured and everything, and he's been in jail. And what's so funny is that one of the new killers is one of the stars of this show and everything, who plays young Shirley. So many stars, like, from Slasher are joining this. So she blanks the like druid dude in jail, but she starts to get way too attached, way too fast. Like the whole wedding bells and picket white fence and a puppy and all this other crap. He's like, I ain't doing this crap. And she's just very distraught by that in her flashback. Now, JP showed up out of nowhere, and at first I didn't know who the heck this character was. He's been watching them in the woods, and he's covered in scars and cuts and bruises. He's the chauffeur that brought them there in the first episode, played by the dude who played Carl in Goosebumps. So he actually has a gun. And he's been freaked out. Where is his hearse? I have no idea. How he got stuck in the woods? I have no idea. But pretty much when he starts seeing the dead bodies, he freaks out, pointing the gun at everybody, only for the people to disarm him. And then Adriana gets the gun. It turns into a huge male versus female thing. So the women have decided they're going to lock themselves in the room and wait this whole thing out. And the men can just go kill each other and stuff. So after a while, Adriana once again is digging at Paige, and Paige is digging at her, and she's getting pissed off and waving the gun at everybody. And Shirley isn't really helping matters and stuff. So when they try to escape the room and open the door, JP is by the door, and Adriana shoots him by mistake. This causes people to pretty much ground her. She's already mentally disturbed, so just like with Ruby, they're grabbing her, dragging her, kicking and screaming, and they lock her in a shed where she's in the dark all by herself while it's raining and storming outside. And they pretty much just said, look, we're going to keep her here. And then in the morning, we're going to leave her there, hike ourselves back into civilization, call the police so they can go and get her. And so Paige is really upset and don't want her in there and stuff. Paige is a very nice person. But, Adriana is able to escape through the skylight and everything. And when she makes herself her way outside in the storm, here comes the killer, the new killer and everything, and slices her throat and hangs her upside down, puts a bag over her head so the blood can pour into the bag and pretty much suffocates her to where she's drowning in her own blood. Blake is played by the actor who was in My Babysitter Was a Vampire. I've never seen that show, but I've seen the trailer because the trailer is on my DVD to another show. He also played JB in The Hardy Boys on Hulu. And so I recognize this dude from like the start. And so he is the only one to ever survive a massacre. When he was a frat boy, there was a killer loose on campus, and there's a really awesome flashback to where we get to see a good chase and a slasher with a knife chasing after people and bodies everywhere on the floor, and him and his girlfriend are trying to make their way to escape and all this other stuff. It has a red filter, and I don't like that. But other than that, I wish they would have made the show about like the fraternity, or at least make a movie like that. So, there's bodies there where him and his girlfriend trying to make their way out. They do, only to see a girl stuck in the frat house. The girlfriend wants to go back to get her, but he does not. He's acting very cowardly and everything. And so they run back, they do this, they do that. And it's a pretty cool chase scene. Like they try to get to her, but she's already sliced up. And they hide under the bed, and here comes the killer, only for the killer to hear something outside. I think police sirens or something. And so at some point they try to make an escape out the car. The killer tries to get them. They escape. They back inside. And the killer confesses to who he is. Basically, it's a pledge that got hazed and everything. And something bad happened during the hazing. Maybe somebody died. Maybe somebody didn't. I can't remember. Or the prank was just so bad. So he's ready to kill both of them, being the last two survivors. And he gives pretty much what's his name a choice. It turns out Blake is actually a coward and left his girlfriend to die. And die she did, but not before she stabbed the killer in the gut and everything. And so when he runs out, there's the police, and the police all like, "You're a hero, son. You killed the killer," and blah, blah, blah. But he didn't do none of that. He's too much of a coward. So he's made his entire career and money selling books about how he survived a fraternity massacre and everything. So he has to live with that guilt. But he is smart to know that, hey, when you got a killer around, you stop that person. So, with only a few people left, the gun in hand, he makes everybody tie themselves up to chairs and everything. And he starts going round and round and starts reading them off, giving reasons as to why they might be the killer. And so he's doing a pretty good convincing job, but he's also getting very, very paranoid. It doesn't help that he leaves only to think about what he did years ago and starts drinking. So now he's tired of so he comes back gun in hand and starts torturing that of Floyd. And so Andy has a little pocket knife and he's able to cut himself free. Well, Paige is able to. She's able to stab him in the gut. And he starts shooting off like bullets like left and right, but completely missing because he's drunk and his stomach is hurting him. He makes his way outside, and so they all like, the wolves will get him and everything, or hypothermia. Well, the killer got him, ran him over with a snowblower and shredded his body to pieces. Floyd and Shirley. Yes, the original killers are the next to go, which means either Paige or Andy is the killer. So, with them and their backstory, the reason why they're doing all this is because they're part of like a cult. A satanic cult. So basically, Shirley is having doubts about her religion and this and that, and she finds somebody who worships the devil and stuff like that. And she meets like Floyd at his place. And he starts to groom her even more into it. They believe in this demonic thing named Bethany, which is how they dress like when they do their killings, or at least Floyd dresses that way. He's the one who always dresses in the costume. And so basically with this cult, something has to happen with Saturn when it's in alignment and this and that, and they have to have a bunch of dead bodies and stuff. This is what they started 30 years ago, and this is what they're going to do 30 years later. This entire time, they've had Shirley at like the nice one, the cozy up to everybody. Whereas Floyd, the moment he killed that of Ruby, he's been bloodlusting ever since. He's been overly aggressive, like always getting into arguments with people, fights with people, like you name it. So they've also been planting evidence on the other house guests to make people think that they could be like the killer and stuff. They're trying to get Paige on their side by planting a satanic book in Andy's stuff. She's believing it, and she drugged Andy to make him go to sleep. So Shirley convinces her, "Oh girl, you need like a spa day. Like, why don't you take like a bath, and then I come in with some oils and a massage." And like, really, you gonna do all this after all these people been dying because she's tense? So while in the tub, Paige's cell phone gets a signal, and she starts looking up Andy and stuff, and she calls the police. But anyway, she's been looking up Andy, and then she discovered, well, first she starts also looking up that book that Shirley and them planted. And it turns out Shirley and them was at like a convention, and their picture is on the internet holding up that book. So she realizes that it was Floyd and Shirley who's part of this cult, and they could be the potential killer. So naked in the tub, she is freaking out as Shirley comes in. And Shirley's like putting the upside down cross on like her forehead, well, Paige's forehead, and rubbing her back and all this and that. So at some point in time, Shirley hears the phone chime because Paige is too stupid to put it on like sleeper mode with the password. So Shirley sees what she was looking up and doesn't like what she finds, and they get into a huge struggle. And it's a really good fight. They're like, struggling back and forth, punching each other, throwing stuff at each other, squirting like shampoo in each other's eyes, banging each other's heads around, trying to drown the other person. And once you think Shirley's dead, they do the typical horror movie thing where she comes back and tries to kill Paige some more, only for Paige to straight up murder Shirley and everything. After that, she puts on a robe, she wakes up Andy, and now they're looking for Floyd, thinking, okay, he's the only person who could be the killer left, and let's take him out. They find him all dressed up after he's been chopping all the dead people's body and putting it in his little satanic like ritual type thing, satanic type ritual thing. So they try to fight him off. It's a kind of weak fight with him constantly trying to slash at them, and they're slashing back and standing back and forth and bopping and weaving. It's really lame. However, we did get a really good fight earlier. So much earlier in the season, before the artist died, we got 2 killer fights. So like for the first time I've ever seen this happen, we get 2 costume killers trying to go at each other and stuff. And well, actually I've seen that before on Scream Queens, but it was 2 completely different killers and 2 completely different costumes. Here it's the same costume. So it's Floyd and whoever the new killer is. And needless to say, the new killer is not liking what they're seeing, so they both go at it with knives, and the new killer stabs Floyd in the back upper shoulder. At some point in time, Blake asks him, how did you get that cut? He's all like, oh, it must have happened when we was going after Ruby, and somebody must have like hit me in the back. And they're all like, you're probably the killer and everything. And so, yeah, this was like a really cool fight to see, and I wish I could see more stuff like this in slasher movies. So eventually Paige gets the upper hand and kills the crap out of Floyd. As they make their way outside, the cops are now there. The cops go inside to see everything that has happened. And as everything is okay, you still have to ask the question, which one is the killer? Then the camera pans to the roof and the killer costume is there, which is kind of doesn't make no sense. Now, at some point in time, when Andy was in the room with Paige, he saw some blood from the ceiling, opened up the the little vent thingy, and found a severed heart up there. And so this was planted by, of course, Floyd and Shirley and stuff. So now it makes you wonder, is it Andy or is it Paige? Well, the both of them have gone on with their lives as many months have passed. Her movie career is surging like never before, and Andy is like, doing like more teaching stuff. And so when we find out about both their backstories and stuff, it turns out that like Paige is starting to be a failed actress. She's getting older. Her acting isn't very good. Hollywood is no longer banging down her door. And so it's leaving her with not many options and stuff. As for Andy, his thesis got rejected and he's not going to get a full professorship at this university and everything. And so they told him you can teach at like a community college or something like that. So both of them, their careers were not where they want to be, but they are now. In the present day, they haven't seen each other in months. And Paige is a full-on diva now when it comes to Hollywood. She's bossing everybody around. She thinks she's better than everybody. And she even thinks that, since she's portraying Caitlyn, the original victim from like 30 years ago, she's method acting, talking about I am Caitlyn and everything. You got me for 3 whole movies and everything because this is going to be a trilogy. And so Hollywood's doing the typical thing of just making stuff up. And so for Andy, one of his students is getting like pissing him off, and he's having an attitude with one of his students and confiscating their cell phone and stuff like this and stuff like that. This is weird behavior for both of them because both Andy and Paige are very, very nice towards people. So it really confuses you as to who the killer could be. And he's never confronted her about the whole heart thing because he doesn't know if Floyd and them planted it or not. At some point in time, they get back together and they literally hook up and everything. And after they hooked up, tension starts to rise as to who the killer could be because they start questioning one each other. Because they're starting to think it might not be, Floyd and Shirley and stuff. At some point in time, at her movie premiere, she is embarrassed big time. Because after she filmed her movie, they decided to bring in a younger actress and everything. And she found this out when they watched the movie and her character's head got chopped off by a stand-in, and she doesn't remember filming that. So they screwed her out of her 3-picture deal and replaced her with a younger actress. The younger actress is not going to play her. The younger actress is supposed to play the long-lost child of Caitlyn and whatever I said his name was, Joey or something like that. And then I started to think to myself, a long-lost child twist that's in the movie, the fictional movie. Could there be a long-lost child who was actually doing all the killers, and these two could probably actually be innocent? So, at some point in time, the movie director ends up dead. This is freaking out both Paige and Andy to where they start accusing each other and everything. Because they're all like, you're a failed actress and they screwed you in your 3-picture deal. This is why you're the killer. And then for him, it's all like, oh, you're a failed teaching professor and blah, blah, blah and stuff like that. And he brings up the heart finally, and she's all like, that was planted there and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And so then, one thing that Paige did when she portrayed Caitlyn is that they portrayed her in a more slutty kind of way and like an action hero. And all of a sudden, it finally happens. A confession. So whoever the killer is, when the movie was rolling, they decided to swap the footage with real home video footage of Caitlyn and her husband. And the way they was talking sounded like they was talking to a third person, a child. Now, we've never seen a child before, but also that movie had a twist of a child. And so it is revealed that the child of Caitlyn and Joey is none other than Andy. Andy is pissed because everybody is exploiting his mother's life and making her seem like something she is not. You have the seance dude, the chef, the artist, the podcast, the frat dude. They're all obsessed with this murder that happened so many years ago. But nobody has stopped to think about that. Hey, this woman was a mother and she loved her child and her child loved her. And she's not some spectator and everything. And so this is what happens a lot in real life. Like somebody will die, Hollywood makes a movie or a TV show, but they don't think about the family. And a lot of times the family's all like, don't make this movie or television show, just let us heal and everything. So this is where he is coming from. And he doesn't like the idea of Paige pretending to really be his mother and portraying her in this slutty kind of way. And she does apologize for all that. Well, eventually, she stabs him. And she apologized, talking about how sorry she is for portraying his mother like that, blah, 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 blah. Well, in come the cops, and she has a murder weapon in her hand. And they treat her like a black person. Put it down or we're gonna shoot. She doesn't put it down right away, and they shoot the crap out of her. So, next thing you know, Paige and Andy are laying next to each other, dying in a pool of blood and everything, and it ends. Then we get a very crazy cameo. So, they're gonna make a movie out of like what happened at the motel and everything. And so this actress is auditioning for the role of Paige. And the actress is none other than the very first final girl from season one of Slasher. Not the character, just the actress who portrayed both and everything. So this is a nice little cameo and everything. So this was just like insane. Everybody freaking died. All because of this crazy couple that's in a cult. And so, yeah, like I said before, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible either. There are some really good twists and turns that I was not expecting, and things I've always wanted to see in a slasher movie. Also, the kills were freaking awesome, like always. Well, except for Adriana, that was kind of lame. But like, yeah, it's just like if they could get back on the height of season two, oh, they will have season after show of something. I really wish they would do a movie. That way they can use their own unique style, and this way they have a bigger budget for a chase sequence and all this other stuff. Now, as soon as I started watching the show and I started seeing the co-producer being that Apollo and everything, I'm all like, man, there is no way she's either, I bet you anything, she's either gonna be the killer or she's gonna be the final girl. Because when she's a co-producer, somebody who puts in like some pretty good money and they got some sway as to how the show is gonna like happen and stuff. And so I'm all like, yeah, I bet she's gonna have either like a good role or a final girl role or a killer role. But she was the final girl, but in a shocking twist, she died and everything. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.